Isso.
Sure. Stable. Começamos a usar. Okay, guys, can we start? Yeah, is everyone ready? Well, thank you all for coming on Friday evening. I think you saw the flyer. I mean, we're lucky to have Mohsin with us. Mohsin Babar, he's a leading Pashto nationalist leader from Pakistan. He's known for his unwavering commitment to democratic values and human rights. He's an outspoken critic of the Taliban and the militant groups. He boldly denounces extremism and exposes the nexus between militants and Pakistan's military, which he argues is fueled by US strategic interests. And for his outspoken stance, he's been in prison, he's received death threats, he has been subjected to assassination attempts. I think he's still carrying a couple of bullets in his body. One or two?
Well, they're out.
There are. With some fragments of bullet. So, and thank you for accepting our invitation and taking time out. So we'll start with some questions. First, if you can, start with your introduction, and then the very first question, the controversial one, if you can talk about the military and the militant nexus. And you consistently expose the nexus between Taliban, the militants, the Pakistani military, and how Pakistani military still sees the ISAF still sees the Taliban as their strategic assets, their proxies, and how you highlight this relationship that has been fueled by broader strategic interests. Can you elaborate on why this alliance continues and how it impacts the prospects for peace in the region, the neighboring countries?
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, good evening. And it's been a privilege to be here. And thank you, Roshan, for your invitation. And thank you, everyone. I think if you talk about the militancy in Pakistan, we have to go back in the history and start from the division of India. And after the Second World War, when the British, when they realized it is unable for us to control their colonies, and then they also needed a strategic base in the region to counter the communist bloc. They needed some space and some strategic hegemony in the region. And for that purpose, they were a kind of involved in the creation of Pakistan. And from that onwards, Pakistan has been a kind of, they apparently said that we have been the most strategic or the most ally of the US. But we call it, the way they have carried themselves and the way they have worked along with the US strategic interests. We call it, a kind of be a proxy of the big powers, especially the US. So starting up from the creation of Pakistan, they signed the SEATO and the CENTO agreements with the US, and which was followed by the Afghan Jihad. And Afghan Jihad was something which apparently was to contain the expansion and to counter and diffuse the power of the USSR and making the world in the way it is now. And for that purpose, a lot of investment was done in Pakistan. many madrasas were formed, training centers where people were recruited, the young one were recruited. Special curriculum was designed in the University of Nebraska, which were taught in the madrasas and schools also, and which were trying to create a militant mindset, and then that mindset was further used in that war. And apparently it ended up in achieving the strategic interest of the West, which made them a single power in the world. Now, as I said in the start, that the nexus between Pakistan military and the militants is not, that much simplistic. Actually, it was a kind of execution of the project of America, and for that purpose, they have to create this nexus. And by creating this nexus, the people, the Pashtuns who were living both in Afghanistan and Pakistan, they became the by default casualty, because they have seen the Kalashnikov culture and the violence and everything which was connected with that. So in the first phase, it was the different groups were made who fought against the USSR, and then in Afghanistan was the battleground, and for that purpose they further, which ended up then in the fight within that militant groups, and then followed by the takeover of Taliban, and then after Taliban, we have seen 20 years of Republic era in Afghanistan, and from that onwards, now we have seen again, I will talk about that later on, how Afghanistan was once again handed over to Taliban for the new strategic interests of the US. Previously, the whole war was fought, in the context of the USSR. This time, everything is plain in the context of the China, because that is now a new emerging power in the world. And we, once again, the people, the Pashtuns on the both sides of the Durrani line in Afghanistan, and the entire Afghanistan, and Pashtuns living in Pakistan, they are once again the by default casualties of this global war.
Well, thank you. The second question, the role of international actors. You talked about USSR, now China. So how do you say, you've often criticized America that how Pakistan is fighting their war. So how do you see the international powers, particularly the USA, that have either enabled or hindered efforts to counter extremism in Pakistan and Afghanistan? And how much of...
So can you rephrase this question?
How much is Pakistani military fighting a war for US strategic interests? And how much America is to be blamed for this war on terror, the mess and the destruction of Pashtun communities?
Well, I think the entire blames comes on them, because they started jihad for the purpose of countering USSR, and for that purpose they invested almost $5 billion in Pakistan and Afghanistan, the US and their allies. And the mess which was created in the Kalashnikov culture and the violence which was brought to our region with that war, and then followed by that again after in the creation of Taliban, and then for 20 years long, even when the Republic